Hello, James Williams, Director of Programs with MEF. Fantastic session there with Tim. You always say a picture paints 1,000 words. Well, what does a video do? And some great messages there on how to do it absolutely right with communications. Now, if you set up in business on your own, you will always remember, whether it's a good experience or a bad experience, you always remember your first few customers. And when I set up in business on my own a few years ago, my first customer was Anam Technologies. And it's been a real pleasure seeing them over the years and their journey to where they are right now. And they've now become part of the Infobip family. And I think I'm right in saying this is their first official outing together in public at an event such as ours. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Miriam Pekan, telecom solution expert with Infobip. Hey, Miriam. Hi.
Hi, James.
Good.
Thank you.
No problem. Good to have you with me. Before we get to the introductions, let's get everyone on screen actually for this one. Next up, Ognjen Martinovic, Senior Product Manager.
Hi all, nice to meet you.
Ognjen, nice to have you with me. And Mr. Brian Darcy, Chief Commercial Officer with Anam Technologies. Hey, Brian.
James, hi everyone.
Hello. I first met Brian during my M-Blocks days when he was heading up wholesale over in Ireland with Telefonica over there. Yeah. So
a long time ago. It was definitely.
I know it seems like yesterday, but that was a decade ago, sir. Well, welcome all to the show. And Miriam, I'd like to introduce yourself, who you are, and who Infobip is.
Who Infobip is and who am I? Okay, so I'm basically Infobip child. I like to call myself like that because after the college I started to work at Infobip and I'm here for more than 12 years now. So probably one of the rares that can talk different stories about the beginnings. I work in operator partnerships department, went through several departments during my journey inside of the company. And currently I work on a business side for two telco products Infobip is offering. One is SGate SMS firewall and monetization, and another one mobile identity.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. But who is Infobip though? Yeah.
Who is Infobip? Infobip is a company that I would say for the past few months is a lot in the press releases, dealing with a CPaaS platform, serving on one side enterprise customers, connecting them with mobile operators, trying to provide good customer experience and having close relationship with mobile operators, providing services for them and cherishing customers and working in that segment. Supplying on our platform different channels, and I would say for some of the channels we are innovative, like trying to present them as one of the first companies.
Fantastic. Thank you, Miriam. Now, Brian, I was listening to Miriam there, and it sounds like Anam Technology sounds like quite a great fit with Infobip, and it was made so, wasn't it?
Yeah. So that acquisition happened a couple of weeks back. Look, I think there's lots of synergies in place. Anam is still, you can see where the sign behind me, Anam's brand is still very much alive. And we're still very much trading as a company, looking after customers, partners, and so forth. But look, I think it's a good fit because, as you know, excuse the plug, but we have been rated number 1 firewall for the last 4 years running by Roku, and I think in our space of A2P monetization and protection, we feel we're very strong. And if you look at Infobip on a global stage, they're a very serious global company dealing in aggregation, CPaaS, SaaS, connections on the enterprise side, and a lot of connections and relationships on the mobile operator side. So, yeah, a lot of synergies, a lot of benefits, and a lot of reasons why the acquisition made total sense.
Fantastic, and also welcoming Ognjen Martinovic from Infobip.
Yeah, as you already introduced me, I'm a product manager for our SGate product, so quite similar to what we have with Anam and Brian here also. And working for last 3 years in Infobip. Before that, I used to work in a different industry, in the broadcast industry, for 10 years, and it was a very nice change and quite interesting technologies, and I'm quite happy to join Infobip.
Well, Ongnan, you've joined a vast growing industry, as
Yeah.
we know, with over 2 trillion business messages this year. Business messaging has so much headroom for growth. If you attended our last event, Business Messaging, you'll have heard a presentation from Mobile Squared. And again, that stat still sticks in my head. We've got about 80% of all the organizations, enterprises out there are still not using business messaging. But we're here today to talk specifically about application to person SMS and how to build a sustainable future for everyone with the long-term stability of A2P SMS. So Miriam, I will hand over to you now because you've got a presentation, and I will come back a little later and we'll have a discussion, all 4 of us. Thank you. Okay. Bye for now.
Thank you, James. So as James already stated, today we will try to talk about A2P SMS and how to build a sustainable future with it. Through this presentation, I would like to go through the main 3 topics. So first of all, to talk about the size of the A2P SMS market and what challenges is it facing today. Then to talk about fast-paced digitalization and influence of the COVID-19 pandemic on the A2P SMS traffic. And to finally conclude by mentioning some points that are important for the long-term profitability and sustainability of A2P SMS. So SMS is still the king. It sounds a bit cheesy, but pure facts talk for themselves. So global reach, more than 5 billion mobile phones, more than 90% messages received within the 3 minutes on the user's phone, and by Mobile Squared, there is prediction by 2024 there will be 2.8 trillion messages worth $20 billion. So now let's see what challenges are in front of that journey that we can observe and tackle today. MNOs is facing with huge liability on fraud cases, and we expect them to proactively protect their end users. Even though they're constantly improving their network quality and investing in security segment, there are some fraud cases, short or long term, that are presenting certain challenges for them. So the one very well known is called phishing and malware. We heard about it a lot. And what it's doing, it's trying to trick the end user and steal some sensitive data. Recent malware case that appeared is called FluBot. It's happening on Android mobile devices, and it is not only stealing the sensitive data, it has the ability to send messages to infected contacts, and on this way spread this malware even more. Also to mention that during COVID and pandemic, there is even more usage of phishing attempts due to rise in logistics vertical. Second example, very well known spam, and we all know that we are trying both ends through different algorithms and extensive databases protect ourselves from it and end users. But there is a new one, called artificial traffic inflation, that is secretly in the background trying to send messages to international destinations, and on this way it is pumping end user bill. And for the end, I would like to mention the very well-known also threat of gray routes through SIM boxes, which is illegal and insecure channel for A2P SMS, of course. But it is also creating a bad image for the brands that use this channel because of the possibility of heavily content manipulations and content exchange of MSISDNs. It is not only commercial threat for the MNOs, which will not be able to monetize the full potential, but it is also a big threat in the security aspect, because through this channel, which we said it's insecure, third parties can get access to sensitive data and then use them further in some other fraudulent activities. Okay, after catching up with some security and fraud challenges, I would like to mention some challenges related more to business strategy and monetization segment. So strict and inflexible A2P prices, sometimes coming out from some external bodies or written regulation acts that are imposing rules for pricing strategies. And on this way, they are limiting different A2P use cases and encouraging to put everything in a single A2P bucket. Very high termination rates that are taking effect in certain regions and countries are a bit alarming because they look like a short-term strategy. I think we should all stay somehow humble how we treat A2P SMS channel and think how to invent more innovative traffic segmentation policies rather than exhausting this vertical and bringing it to some end limits. Those high termination rates, of course, can pump up usage of A2P gray routes blooming and more excessive appearance of SIM boxes and other fraudulent activities. There are certain markets that are faced with several limitations on traffic processing or traffic handling in general, implied by data and privacy protection regulations. While such regulation is very valuable and protects end users in a full scope, when we talk about fraudulent activities that are becoming more and more aggressive, it can have impact to decrease filtering capabilities and increase fraud risk level. My colleague recently started to drive one initiative through MEF to jointly view all the aspects and hopefully brainstorm some good conclusions how to tackle with this in the future. Okay, so even though we exhausted this topic a lot, just to mention several interesting facts, 68% of enterprise decision makers feel COVID-19 has speed up digital transformation. By Mobile Square, there is increase in A2P SMS segment influenced by COVID for 77%. And last but not least important, 35% increase rise in global fraud attempts. Now, some interesting statistical facts that are taken out from the portion of the A2P traffic processed through Infobip platform during 2020. On this slide, you can see verticals that experienced drop, and I would like to point out two of them. One is accommodation with a drop in Q2 for 39.8%, and second one is travel with a drop of 86.5%. Now, brighter outcome of the COVID-19 influence are certain verticals that experienced increase and growth. Some of them had a stable growth, such as banking, 26.8%. And then we have some verticals with more exponential growth, like healthcare industry and media and entertainment, with a growth of around 74%, and extraordinary increase in logistics by 99.2%. From Q1 to Q4 2020. So the general conclusion would be that certain verticals had losses, of course, and this had impact more on the enterprise side. But also we have verticals that experienced a huge increase due to this digitalization time, and they bring overall increase in A2P SMS traffic. And for the end, several messages how to secure long-term profitability and sustainability of A2P SMS. So through the last decade, there is a big investment on MNO side in order to make SMS channels secure enough, which encourages both enterprises and users to trust it, which is also visible today with some nice numbers that we can see in traffic growth and money-wise. So just to keep up with the same trend and invest in standardization and security for enterprises. Second one would be to create smart and sustainable pricing packages to secure and encourage existing and some new use cases in A2P SMS space. Setting scalable business processes by supporting platforms and firewall solutions that can quickly adapt to new regulatory and market requirements. And to continue with the future proofing of A2P SMS revenue and maintaining market-leading position of the end-user customer provider of choice by investing in new use cases supported also from the mobile operator side and services like RCS and mobile identity. That's all. Thank you.
Miriam, thank you very much for that presentation. That stat, logistics, 99% increase. That is, that's huge, absolutely huge.
Unfortunately, we didn't have comparison with December to December, so probably there is a bit of influence end of the year, but increase, it's really nice, yeah.
Yeah, so massive, massive impact there. So fantastic, really, really good to see. Now, Brian, let's start with you. You've been in this SMS fraud protection game for a long time. You've seen it from an operator perspective. You've seen it from a solution vendor perspective now. And I think all of us here would agree that if fraudsters have become so innovative, and it pains me to say it, but almost all the time remain one step ahead of everyone else. And they're constantly looking for new ways of attacking members of the general public. But what areas do you think are the real weak areas out there at the moment which need to be made more secure by mobile operators, for example, and others?
So maybe if we think about what actually is happening. So what's the driver here? So if you think about, SMS really is the medium to communicate with, or maybe to defraud the consumer. And I suppose, given that it's mobile technology, as a byproduct, it's a way to defraud or to the mobile operator. So I think what's important at the moment is that manipulating consumers in a fraudulent way is not something new. It's happened on email. It's happened through all sorts of mediums, and now it just happens to be well and truly in our industry, and it's very much in the space of messaging. And I think I don't think it definitely is becoming more of a problem, and it's becoming more of a problem because messaging is becoming more prominent and it's growing. And you mentioned a figure of 2 trillion messages. The kind of growth that's been seen at the moment is phenomenal. So what's happened is the fraud community, if you want to call them that, the fraudsters, it's very logical that they would start to look at messaging, and they would move in there and they would think, all right, so what's the next best way to get to a consumer? How do I either do identity theft, or how do I have commercial gain on the consumer? And that now very much is messaging. And then I suppose in a similar vein, because of mobile technology, there are also ways to defraud and have commercial gain from mobile operators. So, look, what's fundamental here is and then if you look at the value chain, you've got mobile operators who obviously are a big part of the network and the infrastructure. You've got the aggregator stroke CPaaS SaaS provider, and you've got the enterprise. So the enterprise is looking for a way to communicate to their customers, their staff, the community at large through a clean channel. So they will look back down the pipe and see who can support that. So the obligation is on the aggregator or the SaaS provider, and also very much on the mobile operator. So I think as the consumer is looking at the industry to protect their position, and I think the aggregators and the mobile operators have an obligation to provide a clean service. If they do, this will be a long and fruitful industry with huge growth. If they don't, we've seen other technologies fall by the wayside because they become compromised.
Now, Ognian, bringing you into the conversation, you are at the ultra sharp end as senior product manager looking after the S-Gate solution.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So what has changed with COVID in the past 15 months? What new annoyances, or more than annoyances, have popped up in terms of threat in particular? They may not be brand new, but they're probably increased in number. What have you seen at Infobip and with your partners and with your customers?
We have definitely seen an increase in phishing attempts because of all of the traffic increases that you mentioned, all of the fast-paced digitalization, certain COVID-19 use cases, with legitimate campaigns that were also misused and created to actually lure the users to click on bogus links, to give their personal information, or even to get the malware infected on the phone so that it can steal the information without luring the users. And definitely we see this phishing attempts, especially in logistic space, where you have parcel delivery notifications requiring immediate action, is creating sense of urgency, which always is the case with phishing attempts. And the recent case that it's quite active in the security among the operators now is the flu bot. It's a new type of malware which is sent through SMS, distributed via links which are leading to the infected site, which then offers to install application on the mobile phone. And once the user is actually clicks on that, and if they have a bad day and click on all of these steps, they get the malware infected, and then they are in the world of hurt, essentially. Because it's not only that this actually can, survey their phone, it can also intercept SMS, make USSD and voice calls, and it gets also access to the core components of Android. It can even overlay phishing sites over the legitimate application. So without actually deep investigation, user doesn't know that they have a problem on the mobile phone.
So linking to that, we actually have a question from the audience from Nigel Dodd. Actually, what actions are you, so that would be Infobip, and ultimately also Anam, are you taking to actually shield your customers from phishing by SMS and indeed the flu bot campaigns we're seeing out there in the market? So, Ognian, what are you doing at Infobip?
Yes, well, we have two basically fronts where we fight against this threat. One is on the platform side, where we are actually the ones who actually send the traffic, A2P traffic to the to networks and to different users across the globe. We protect and shield our platform so that it's not used for such attempts. We have the filtering there. And on the other side, with our S-Gate product, we also help operators to safeguard their users from the all of the possible sources.
Fantastic.
And one of the things that I would like to mention here is that these infected phones can even be used to spread the disease furthermore, because they get access to the contact list of that, and then they can target even more people.
Okay. Now, Miriam, in case you hadn't realised, I know you've been to the UK a few times. Us Brits, we like to be a little bit different from other people. I'm probably about to see Brian nodding furiously as well, but he won't. Now, what principal differences are you seeing with regards to all these threats around in the SMS sphere across the world? So what's bigger threat-wise in certain regions than others? What are the big things your Infobip are seeing?
There are definitely some, I would say, things and fraud cases that are somehow happening only in one region, and some that are spread globally. So, for example, we have flash calls that are somehow typical for maybe Eurasia region, and but I wouldn't say so. So there are certain brands that like to use maybe this channel, but it doesn't seem like a huge threat because it's not taking long and it didn't take a lot of effect. So I would say it's a more exception than some rule to use it as a channel replacing the A2P SMS. Why it happened there for sure, and what helped encourage brands to use it, that in some countries in Eurasia prices are really going extremely high, so which is a bit concerning overall. Then we had one interesting case in Indonesia while we were installing our solution. What is specific for Indonesia for USSD traffic, by the regulation, operator has to leave like to flow fluently without any kind of impact how they will treat the traffic. And we saw that some companies are somehow misusing this channel and also trying to use it instead of A2P SMS. So operator suffers here and is not able to collect traffic through the proper channel. So we helped the mobile operator to fight with it and made certain measures how to prevent. What's happening on a global scale, right? Always familiar SIM farms. Maybe here to mention that what is encouraging fraudsters to use SIM farms, of course, it's certain regulation and policies operators have. So in certain countries, it's much easier to buy more SIM cards, and if it's very cheap and if some bundle packages are cheap, so they are using, unfortunately, more this channel, and in those markets it's somehow more challenging for a company like us to fight and help mobile operators.
Yeah, maybe if I can jump in there, one of the things that we're seeing, which has kind of changed maybe from last year, is that mobile operators are actively talking more about fraud, and I think they have identified that it is a risk. I suppose if you look back, it was probably a primary focus was on the commercial fraud, whereas now there's a much more noise within the operator community about general fraud, so theft, identity, network fraud, and so forth. So I think it's become quite a topical issue within that industry, within the mobile community, which obviously is a good thing. You've got to identify that there's a problem, and you've got to recognize there's a problem. And so with the growth that we've all seen in fraud, we definitely have seen more activity from mobile operators looking to focus on fraud.
But Brian, what about regulation? Because I know increasingly around the world, raw regulation is coming in, looking at SMS. But hang on a second, it's treating SMS as one product, but really they're two very different products: person-to-person, P2P, and A2P. So, what's the score with that? What's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's everything from some countries have a lot of regulation, other countries have no regulation on SMS. You've got a scenario where you can't block traffic coming from other local networks in a country. You can't block A2P coming over the wrong route. You have to let all traffic through, which kind of becomes a kind of a legal grey route unless you can protect it through price increases or price parity. But so we have seen a scenario. Well, yeah, there is a scenario where in some countries regulation really does need to catch up, and I think this is all part of in the last couple of years, maybe even last year. I mean, messaging really has become center stage as a communication channel, and I think the industry as a whole needs to catch up, and they need to look at it to make sure the regulation is fit for purpose, GDPR is fit for purpose, and the security protocols are in place to protect it, and ultimately make it a clean, viable, regulated channel for and I say regulated in a good way, regulated for the enterprise. And it was an amazing stat that Nick Lane put out, where we're only at the tip of the iceberg in terms of the enterprise who are actually using SMS. There is so much growth here. There's so much growth here, and if we can get this right, it becomes a very, very sustainable space to be in.
Now, apologies, panelists, because this is ultimately my favorite subject in the world of mobile messaging. I could go on for hours and days about it, but we have time against us. We've only got like 4 minutes left, and we have a couple of questions from the audience I want to address very, very quickly. Flash calling. Onion, what flash calling? the question is basically flash calling efficient? What would you say to an operator, a mobile operator in flash calling?
Well, this is a term which is used to describe the fraud case in which instead of sending OTP or one-time PIN over SMS channel, you make the call from a number that is, containing certain numbers then are read by the application on the phone itself, and you have a missed call, and the application gets access to the call register database and reads the missed call and uses certain digits from that call to make the authentication automatically and seamlessly. And this is done without even any action from the user itself. You just click verify, and then everything happens by magic, and you have the missing call as the only trace on your phone.
So what would you say? What would Infobip say to mobile operators in flash calling? Don't have it?
This is definitely a threat, to the business and also to the privacy side. And we are always advising to fight against this, and as Miriam suggested, take other measures in place as well, so that you can protect the SMS ecosystem as well, and not to encourage these illegal routes.
Fantastic. There's some other questions as well here, but we won't get enough time to answer them all. But mainly the principal thrust of it as well, it seems to be an increasing trend for large enterprises to want to go directly to mobile operators to get connectivity. Miriam, do you think that will create issues and disturb the ecosystem out there with some large enterprises themselves are going directly to the operators? Will that affect security in any way or not really?
In the end, MNOs need a proper firewall solution to have the visibility of what is going on with the SMS channel. So there is a space, and there will be a business here for the companies providing those solutions. Also, it's very important to use messaging platform, as Ognjen mentioned, with security measures and different kind of protections on the platform end. So maybe it will just change a bit the business models in a sense, but I think there is still space for everyone in the chain.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're about to close up here. So do you know what? Usually I get my panelists to rate things 1 out of 10 at the beginning, but I'm going to ask you right now at the end, how do you think the community as a whole, the mobile ecosystem, so mobile operators, aggregators, etc., out of 10, 1 to 10, 1 being terrible, 10 being absolutely superb, we don't need to improve anything, how would you rate the current situation globally with regards to A2P SMS and security? Start with you, Ognjen.
I would give it 5, because there is not everything is terrible, but there is definitely a room for improvement and new things. Okay,
thank you. And Miriam, the same to you.
More from a business side, I would say between 7 to 8. Because it's going more in direction increasing both the traffic and the revenues for companies in the chain than going down. So I would look on more positive side.
Perfect. Okay. And Brian, don't say 6.
Yeah. So I'm an optimist. So I would say that things are definitely in a good place. And I suppose I say that when I compare them to a couple of years ago, when it really was, it was just all wide open. And there are efforts being made now by so many players in the industry to.
So what's your number, sir? What's your number? We've got to close up this session. So come on.
Okay, I'll say 7.5.
Oh, 7.5. There we go. Okay, well, there we have it. So, folks out there, yes, there are shiny new channels with which to engage with your customers, but don't forget the trusty, humble SMS, which will be 29 years old on December the 3rd this year. So, all that remains to me is to thank my panelists, Brian Darcy from Anam, Ognjen Martinovic, and Miriam Pechan from Infobip. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you all, and join me again very soon. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.